Right, so as I said, I'm going to talk a bit about myself, my company. I'm going to talk about the year of 2016 and property, and then obviously I'll let you know what type of referrals I'm looking for. Alright, that's me. That is an Appaloosa horse, and that is an Appaloosa horse.
Cool.
Okay, if anybody knows what a Dalmatian looks like, I've got a horse that looks like a Dalmatian. Okay. It's a specific breed that comes from America, and I'm very passionate about them because they are the most hardiest, loving, gentle horses in terms of breeds that you can find out there. That's my selection of dogs: St. Bernard, Lab, 2 Danes, a Basset, and a If. And if we're not quite sure what she is, one thing we do is we rescue dogs. Obviously, living on a small holding, we have the space, so we like to provide a home for dogs. And at the bottom, there's my daughter and my son, and there's a picture of my daughter who's got a hole-in-one last month playing golf. And that's her picking the ball out of it. So I had insurance for my hole-in-one. Right, about the company, my logo is puzzles. Because property can be very puzzling. There's a lot of components to property, and I really believe that I can help you put all those pieces together. Because there are so many components, and I put you all those, then it makes you far more comfortable in understanding what you want to do in terms of a property function. So we will source property for you, we'll rent it out for you, we'll manage it for you, and we'll arrange for the property to be maintained. Because ultimately you want to make sure that your asset is looked after. So I bought my first property in 2002. And I absolutely panicked. I had to put 500 rand deposit down. So that was quite an experience. Of course, now that's a completely, we'd love to be able to put 500 rand. And let me tell you that my first property is the best yielding property that I have in my portfolio. Okay, so I passed the Estate Agents Affairs certificate in 2005. And then I started my company in 2008. In terms of other qualifications respective specifically to property, I've got diploma in sectional title management, which is absolutely key because a lot of these sectional titles don't actually run their complexes correctly. And in 2010, the government changed the law in terms of estate agents, and we had to go through a far more formal process in terms of being able to run as estate agents. And I've got the highest level, which is your Master in Real Estate Practitioner, and I got that in 2013. But every year I continue to further my education, and I specifically interest in real estate, in trust management, law in terms of property, and tax in terms of property. Right, so what do you need to know about property in 2016? What are the risks? What is the management that you need to be aware of? And obviously what are the capital growth issues? Now, as I said, I can talk forever on this subject, so it's really difficult to put something down. So I've just picked 1 or 2 charts that you obviously have access to, just to give you some sort of idea of what's happening with property in 2016. It's not a pretty picture, unfortunately. Okay, so good thing you didn't invite a bond originator. Okay, so if you're thinking of selling your property, take a deep breath, because you're going to get far less than what you think what you're going to get for it. Okay? But if you're looking to buy, absolutely what is exciting is it is a buyer's market. You can go out and find really good deals, and the deals are coming. The only issue is getting a bond. Okay? The 100% bond doesn't exist anymore. It really, really doesn't. It's mostly you have to put a 20% deposit down. And there are specific banks, and this is where you need to work in an estate agent who knows what's going on. They might not be the bond originator. They know the exercise. Barclays Africa used to be the biggest provider of mortgage bonds, okay, in South Africa. But Standard Bank has now taken over. They're 30% of the market share. All right. So ABSA is less likely to give you a bond. But the bank that is more likely to give you a bond is Nedbank, because they're doing very well, believe it or not. What's happened with ABSA, or Barclays Africa, is their indebtedness, in other words, people who are not paying their bonds, has increased by 77%.
Wow.
Okay. So things are tough out there, all right? But if you're a property investor, you know what you're looking for, you're going to find those deals. And there are ways of buying property without having a bond. And if you want to know how, I will introduce you to Bev, and you and I will work together to show you how to buy property without a bond. Okay, but there you can see, basically in 2016 it has just started to drop, okay, in terms of the value of bonds that have been approved. So you're probably looking at between 2 out of every 10 that are actually being approved. Okay. So you've got an investment portfolio and you now want to add your additional property. So where am I going to get the best average rent? Well, if you move out to the Northern Cape, okay, your average rent is 7,407. Okay, but why would you want to go to the Northern Cape? Well, if you're in the mining industry, that's the perfect place to be. But if you're in Gauteng, our average rental is 6,853. So bear that in mind. If you're going to buy a property in the millions, you're just not going to get the return as if you buy a smaller property in the 700,000, you're going to get a much better return. So you need to be aware of what the average rentals are in the provinces. So where would you want to invest? Okay. Right now, Joburg is the best place to buy property. Okay, this is your gross yield. Now I know, unless you're in numbers and you actually understand the difference between gross and net and all of that, so then if you don't, come to me. I will work all those numbers out for you. Okay, that's what my job is. Gross basically means in terms of the rental that you're getting in against the value of your property, that's the rent you're getting. Net is when you take all the deductions off. So bearing in mind that your gross yield in Joburg might be very high, but it's expensive to own property. Okay, so your net yield might not be that high. So again, you need to look at each property and do the numbers. Durban, Ekikwini, whatever it is also, yeah, thank you, is a much better place because their costs of owning the property is actually a little bit less, but the yields are quite high. So if you want to buy that holiday home that you want to rent out for the rest of the year, it's an option. But bear in mind, the banks won't give it to you for your second home. Nasty. Right, benefits my service. I'll continue to keep you updated with the economic status of the rental market. I'll find a credit-worthy tenant who can afford the rent. I'll manage and monitor your tenant payments profiles, and I'll obviously manage the property state. So I always make sure that it's maintained so that you get the best rental out of that property. On a monthly basis, I get a report from our credit bureau. I belong to TPN, Tenant Profile Network, which is the credit bureau specifically for the rental market. And in that report every month, I get an indication if within that month somebody has suddenly become a bad debtor. So suddenly they haven't paid something or there's a new default. So I can watch my tenants that are in the properties every month and I can see if they're getting themselves into trouble. And they will get the phone call before they get themselves into trouble. Hello, how are things going? And they generally will then tell you that things are tough and everything like that, because you don't want to have a problem. You've got a tenant sitting there for 6 months not paying your rent. Okay. So just out of interest, this is one of the pictures, and unfortunately I had to pull it out so it isn't the best. This top one, basically that yellow line is the national good standing percentage, and the blue one is how I perform against that. So the national on average is 85%. So that means 85% of the tenants out there pay, are in good standing. In other words, they pay on time, they've got good credit records in terms of the tenant profile. I monitor this very carefully and I try and keep it as high as possible. My average at the moment is just under 90%, and in some months I get 100% of good standing, which means all my tenants are paid by the first of the month. Okay. The other key thing is how long it takes me to collect the rent. Okay. In terms of the national average, on average is between 4 and 5 days to collect the rent after the first. Now everybody's lease says the rent must appear on the first. And now sometimes that is influenced, for example, the 1st of October was on a weekend. So people will pay on the 1st, but the banks only actually ultimately get transferred into your bank account the 3rd or the 4th. Okay. So that can be a bit of a challenge. But you'll see on average, I'm round about, every now and then I go up, and those are generally in the January months, because people go away and suddenly realize they haven't paid their rent. But generally I can collect my rent in my rental portfolio that managed within 2 days. Okay. My tenants know I'm a stickler for making sure the money arrives. Right, in terms of the type of referrals, I'm not for anybody who wants to invest into residential property, buy-to-let options. Even if they're thinking about it, they want to understand how that process, I'm happy just to have a cup of coffee with somebody to go through what it is to own property as an asset class. All right. I'm looking for somebody who already has a property investment and wants to check, are they getting the right terms, are they getting the right capital growth? And I'm looking for somebody who's got that property, wants to source the right tenant, wants me to manage the tenants and make sure that they get their money every month. So thank you very much. Melissa Rice from Eco Property.